And I will call to order this June 15th, 2018 public hearing of the City of Prescott Preservation Commission. The members present today are Tony Teeters, Russ Buchanan, Gary Edelbrock, Russ Buchanan, and myself, I'm Robert Burford, the chair. We also have today George Worley, who is stepping in for Kat Moody, who is out on a personal matter. Darla Eastman, our recording secretary, and Councilman Good, our liaison with the council. Thank you. This is an open public hearing and is being videotaped and tape recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, local cable and/or radio stations, and may also be rebroadcast. The number of commission members present is 4, and it will require all 4 votes for a majority for any business that we take up today. All parties wishing to be heard on an issue are required to raise their hands and be acknowledged by the chairman prior to speaking. Speakers will be expected to state their name, their local address for the record, so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if it is necessary. And the disclaimer, please turn off your cell phones or electronic devices now if you haven't already done so, and also sign the attendance roster before leaving the meeting. We have a few items of business today, the first being the approval of the minutes of May 11th, 2018 meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at those, and are there any concerns or questions, additions, subtractions?
None for me.
If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion made. Second that. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes of the May 11th meeting. Those in favor of that say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Passes. Item number 2 of the regular agenda is HP 18-002. This is 929 Apache Drive, Historic Preservation District number 10, Pinecrest. And it is a request for approval for a wrought iron or steel fence in the front yard. And I will ask Mr. Worley to present this for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this request actually was on your agenda last month. You had some opportunity to look at the information and consider some of the criteria associated with it at that time. The request is to permanently install a fence that has been temporarily installed on the property at this point. The request specifically is for this fence to be moved forward onto the wall, which appears to be a stone wall with a concrete finish on it, a rough concrete finish, almost like a stucco type finish on it. The current location of the temporary installation is just behind the wall. As you noted in the staff report prepared for you by Kat Moody, the general installation process that's used in areas where there are historic walls like this is to try to keep the new fence, the new portions off of the old historic portions and set them just behind the wall. That's something that has been done in other areas of town, other historic districts where installations like this were proposed. The fence as proposed, the wrought iron or whatever material it's made of, is 3 feet tall. It can be installed on or behind the wall because of the way we measure fence heights. It's legal within the front building setback. On a retaining wall situation like this, we measure from the high side. So the fence that's proposed is a legal installation, or would be a legal installation depending on your action today. The request again is to move it forward and pin it into the wall itself. And that was a point of discussion at your last meeting, and we didn't have the applicants available to answer questions about that at that time. Given the circumstances and given your prior knowledge of the proposal, it may be appropriate for you to open this up to the applicant and start asking questions there. If there are specific things relating to fence permitting or concerns about the historic integrity of the neighborhood or the wall, I can certainly try to help answer those. But at this point, I think enough background information is in your hands to move forward to the applicant for discussion.
Thank you. And I would agree, we will have discussion, but let's listen from the applicant and have their discussion on this application.
Want me up here?
Please, yeah, and name and address, just quickly.
Yes, my name is Tonya Kennedy, 929 Apache Drive. I am not a builder, but this is my builder, Richard Sweeten, and he can tell you the details.
All right, actually, I'm the project manager.
Project manager.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right,
So, do you need it? Wait a minute. You need anything more from me?
Whatever you want to say about
Oh.
this,
well,
application to either approve or not
reason-
approve. Yeah.
For the fence is actually to keep the javelinas out of my yard. I am a gardener, and it's very, important to me at my age. This is my whole area of, interest. And the javelinas are in our neighborhood every day almost. And of course, I want it to be professionally done and to, of course, do it legally. So that's why I'm here.
Okay. And
There are some.
if you would just state your name and address,
Oh,
please.
I'm Richard Sweet. Tanya mentioned it
Oh,
for me.
Use the mic, please. Please use
To
the
the,
mic.
to the mic, please.
Okay.
Sorry, it's being recorded, and
All right.
we can hear you fine, but it's being recorded, so the mic.
Okay. I'm Richard Sweeten, and there are project manager for Tanya Kennedy. And there are some differences in the picture that you see as to what the final installation will be. The posts with the balls on them are small round tubes. They will be square, 1.5 by 1.5 inches. Now, the pinning will be done differently than what most people would suspect. I'm proposing to set a 5/8 rebar into the wall and then put the new post, the 1.5 by 1.5 post on it, and then embed that also into a setting compound. Now, this does a number of things. It stops the post from rotting from the inside out, and it prevents, if you pin it on the ears, they come loose after a while. And this prevents that. The holes, the way I'm proposing to pin it, will be small enough that it will not impact the wall. And that wall is concrete set river rock with a gray paint on it. Okay, it's not a dry stack or anything like that. Now, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Let me ask one first. I guess that particular installation, it will need to have those posts fall on a stone and not in the mortar bed or off the edge
Right.
of the stone. So layout will be critical. And in an existing old stone wall, it's not, you're not going to move the stones
I don't make
around.
mistakes
You're gonna
that
have
way.
to move the posts around to fit that, which may throw your pattern of fencing off. I think that's the concern, is that this is an older stone wall. And Kat had shown us some previous photos with some, at the corner particularly, had a crack in that wall. And I think that's the concern here, is that is a stable, and I understand the process is doable. I mean, if you can drill into a stone, and hopefully those stones will be where you're anticipating them to be. But I think that was part of the concern, that it wasn't a concrete wall you were drilling into.
there's a number of ways to set a fence like this. One would be to drill a hole large enough to set the square post on it.
itself.
That would require about a 2 to 2.5 inch hole. I've opted to do the other way because it's a lot smaller hole. We'll be setting either 1/2 inch or 5/8 rebar into the hole. Now, this wall is a little more well, it's by far more stable than other walls in the neighborhood, which show a lot more deterioration. The cracks that you were mentioning are at the corners. There are very few. I think I've only noticed one other crack that's in the middle of the wall. Those corners will be repaired and pinned. That's already figured into the works. And the pinning on those corners is still going to require drilling a hole of about the same diameter. And that's to prevent the wall from deteriorating any farther.
And the alternate option would be to permanently set it where it is now temporarily set, which just curious as to why that, or if you would consider that being an option, or the owner would consider that being an option, and why it's sitting on
Right.
the wall instead of being.
Number one, on the wall is more authentic. That's the way they used to do it when you go back to the early 1900s and things like that. It used to be always on the wall and not behind the wall. Number two, if you set it behind the wall, there is a strong chance of that fence working because the concrete footing for the post is independent, and it can move and it can work. It's because it's only going to be a round, concrete cylinder like that with a post in it. This will make the neighborhood by far look more authentic and be very much in time with when this house was built.
Okay.
Now, setting it behind the fence, correct, that is an option. But the preference would be to set it on the fence, and the reason I'm doing that is because I feel it will do a stronger, more secure job and will not hurt the fence.
Okay. Other members?
Thank you for explaining all this. Have you tried any test holes to see if it'll take an impact drill, 5/8
Yes.
bit going through the rock and mortar and whatever
Yes,
else?
and I've worked with it in the side and the back, and yes, it does, and it does not break up.
Okay.
The concrete holding these rocks together. Kat showed me a picture of another fence that was installed just down the street from it. That fence uses, I believe it's 2.5 or 3 inch posts. That wall is not as strong as this wall is. If you look at it, you can tell just by looking at it that wall down there, the concrete is starting to deteriorate on it. This fence is not that way. My personal experience is that by doing this and doing it properly, it will actually add strength to the fence because it will bond, it will tie those together.
Well, I agree. It could be some benefit in the corners where there's cracks.
Well, even in the middle, if you're not drilling a hole that big,
Right.
it will bond the rocks together better.
Right.
And that's the other reason I chose that method.
All righty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant or the general?
Mr. Chairman, I do know we have a few folks from the neighborhood who are here also.
Yeah, I would open this up to anyone else that wants to make comments. Sure, come forward. Name and address, please.
Dixie Sargent at 937 Apache Drive. I use the same fencing for my pets. It's made out of aluminum. It's also not, it's seamed together and it rots very quickly. Even if the posts were put into cement, the rungs, the small rungs in between are all seamed together, and if you look at them, they're open all over the place. This is not meant to be a sturdy fencing. It's sold as garden fencing at Home Depot and Lowe's. I have used it for many, many years, and I see how it handles weather. The tops always rot out. Also, putting it trying to put it into cement even behind the wall. It comes with these long triangular things that go into the ground that actually hold this little center post. It's very sturdy when used that way. It's also, you can also easily take it out and move it if you want to move it. To put it inside of, to drill through this kind of wall and to put aluminum in there, you're kind of setting yourself up. It's going to eventually, quicker than the wrought iron wall that I have next door that goes between the property. It is actually steel and wrought iron, and it's put inside brick wall. And it's been there since forever, since the night. I know Tonia's family at one time was involved in putting that wall up. So it's been there a really long time. My concern is that the aluminum is not durable. It also is not period to the neighborhood. The neighborhood preservation papers states that they would prefer that no one have any fencing in the front areas, only between properties and at the back. Tonia's property is completely surrounded from the back wrought iron that's there all the way to the back. She has a fully enclosed property garden area. She's recently put drought-tolerant plants that javelinas do not have anything to do with at all in the front, which is a good thing because I understand for her age and to be gardening and the fear of javelina. I just don't feel it fits the period of the neighborhood. The entire structure now is no longer an historical house, and as it continues, it becomes less and less, even to the appearance on the street, which on both sides of her and across the street, she does have historically rated houses, and this one is no longer. And I would really like to see the front of the house somehow take on the appearance of a historical house, if possible. And it would be the only house on the entire circle, except at the back end, that has any kind of fencing in the front. And it does, and it's an owner's prerogative, to put up fencing, and I would not argue that. And it's just, I think it could be more fitting for the neighborhood. So,
Thank you. Does anyone have questions of this speaker?
I think, but the aluminum's not going into the rock.
Tony, microphone,
Oh,
please.
sorry. Okay, I've been gone.
Yeah.
The aluminum is not going into the rock, as I understand. That's rebar, correct?
the post is aluminum as well.
But the actual rebar is steel.
Let's get some clarity on materials here.
Yeah, you can get that. I'm
if-
not an expert like Richard, so.
If we could, because we've talked about wrought iron and steel and aluminum and rebar, and let's see if we can get some clarity on what the actual material is.
The actual material of the fence is steel, it's welded, and it's epoxy painted. All right,
This,
that, yes,
that's up there now.
that, yeah, and those will be the panels, only they're gonna be reconfigured to fit the proper layout according to the plan.
So those are steel.
It's all steel, it's 100% steel. The posts are, I believe it's .093 steel, and it has the scalloped edges on the four corners, that look like the wrought iron. I have done everything that I possibly could to make this fence look authentic. There's not one stitch of aluminum in that fence. The points are all solid. There's not going to be anything that's going to rot there. The bottom part, where it looks like it hits the bottom, is going to be 2 to 3 inches off the top of the concrete, and only the posts are there. The fencing when the statement that was made that there is no fencing in the front yard, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 houses going around that block, Yavapai, Apache, Cochise, that have fencing in the front yard, and one of them was put up this year.
Okay? Yes.
Yeah, there seems to be a misunderstanding that that we are looking at is only temporary. This fence is gonna be gone, and we are trying to replace this with whatever is acceptable to the committee. So these objections are not valid. This will be gone, and the new fence will be according to Hoyle. So
So you're.
there's a
you're-
misunderstanding.
You're saying that this,
Tanya's
just
correct. No
one
asked
moment,
that.
please.
That
Just
is
one
true.
moment, please.
Okay, go ahead.
You're saying that this fencing that we're seeing here in the photograph, these panels are not going to be reused?
All right, well, that was my
The
understanding.
the panels will be used on the new fence. Those are panels made up in the new fence, okay? The only difference where those balls are is a round rod.
Right.
Like Dixie said, and there's a stake in the bottom of it. That was to hold it in temporarily.
Okay.
There will be no stake in this. There will be a solid 029 steel post with a cap on it going in its place, set in a pin in rebar, and then the inside of that post will be filled with what they call, it's an equipment setting cement, so that there is no chance for water to get in and rust that from the inside out. That's one of the faults we'll leave in the iron fence, the wrought iron fences, they rust.
Non-shrink grout or something like that, yeah.
Right. I'm doing everything that I possibly can to keep it from rusting.
Okay. Okay, that clarifies things, thank you. Any other comments or,
I just have a question.
Sure.
How tall is the fence gonna be? I see they
It's-
asked for a 6-foot fence, and our neighborhood is 3 to 4 feet, 4 being the maximum.
George
The
can
front-
address what's allowed.
Mr. Chairman, the front allowance is 4 feet
4
in
feet.
height maximum. On a situation where there's a retaining wall, we measure from the high side of the wall. So the retained ground is where we measure from. In this case, if the fence is installed on top of that rock and concrete retaining wall, we would measure from the top of that. And as I understand it from all the paperwork that was submitted, that's to be 3 feet tall. So it's 3 feet on top of the wall.
So the measurement, I'm sorry, George, I should know this. The measurement is from,
The grade level on the
Adjacent to the wall.
retained side of the wall.
okay.
Right.
So that height needs to be 4 feet or less in the front yard, continuing to the side setback.
Within the
to
front setback,
yard
which is 20
setback
feet in
at
this
the
area.
sides.
Right.
Okay, is that clear? Yeah. And you're requesting,
No, I'm not requesting, I'm just clarifying. The height will be including the 2-inch space underneath, under 3 feet to the top of the picket, not the top of the ball.
That's-
Okay?
3 feet from
From the block wall,
the top of the block wall?
under 3 feet from the top of the block wall to the top of the picket.
Okay, thank you. So does that answer?
Yeah, it answers my question. I have the same panels I use for my pets. And they're 3 feet tall. From the bottom of the panel to the top of the panel. They're 3 feet tall. And they are pressed together with seams. Each top pointy part has a seam, and they come apart really easy. They're flimsy. That's one of the failures of the model, because water seeps inside, and they don't rot from the bottom up, they rot from the top down. And it may not be aluminum, but it's definitely an alloy, and that's why it's so cheap. And that's why it's meant to be a movable garden fencing, and that's all I'm saying. For them to invest that kind of money, and that's their prerogative, to put that in and put it into a wall, they're gonna be stuck with something that's not gonna last, like the retaining wall between the properties that has real wrought iron.
Or steel, as the case may be, as actual material? Okay.
And that's their choice. I'm not arguing that they shouldn't do it, I'm just pointing that out.
Thank you. Other comments from other people? Okay, commissioners, want to have a discussion about? Does anyone have other questions or a discussion about this particular request?
Well, I'd sure like to see a sample of the fencing now. I
It
didn't
is a
think
bit
that would be
confusing.
an issue. I have a similar temporary style pet type fence on my side yard. And if it's exactly like that, then I wouldn't recommend it as a permanent fixture in the front of anybody's house. But I didn't understand that this, well, first I thought it was wrought iron, or what they call wrought iron nowadays. Then I heard it was aluminum. Now it's not aluminum, it's iron, right?
Your confusion's coming in because of preconceived ideas. When this fence is done, the only reason that I've shown it that is to show the design of the fence. Okay? When this fence is done, it will not fall apart and it will not rot. The tops of that post is all secure and it's all weathertight. There isn't any way for water to get in. The posts that are going up to support that fence, all right, to do it the way Dixie said, the posts would be the way you see the round balls there, but they're not. They're going to be spread out symmetrically down the fence so that it looks proper. In other words, they're going to be about 6 foot apart. You can't do that using the stock fence that's there. These panels are steel, and they're very strong in themselves. When they're done, they're going to be even stronger because they're going to be secured securely to those posts and not by the fixtures that are being used now in the temporary fence. That's the main difference between a temporary fence and what I'm proposing. The panels will be secured to the posts and not in a temporary manner. These panels have a round hole where the post goes through the middle and a steel stake at the bottom. That's not...
How high up is your, you're going to put 5/8 rebar drilled into and pounded into the...
Right. It'll be about a foot up inside the post.
Okay, so
You'll never see the
it'll
rebar.
be supported by a foot sticking up and another 2 feet with nothing in it, right?
No, then there's this equipment setting cement poured inside the post to the top. That will lock the post to the rebar. Now, that rebar can go up 36 inches. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It's whatever's needed. The key to this installation is the post at the bottom, right where it hits the fence, and that's why it's locked in this equipment setting cement, is so that it can't move. This also gives me flexibility in case I'm off a little bit. I can move the post as much as an inch either way
Or it sets
without upsetting the layout.
Right, I understand that. So the structural integrity, in your opinion, of the fence panels is adequate, right?
It's more than adequate. It'll be there longer than the wrought iron fence will.
Okay,
And the reason for that is because of the epoxy coating on it.
okay. Well, without seeing it, I have no idea, but I take your word for it that it's structurally adequate for the front yard. A person or a child could climb on it, and it's not gonna,
Oh, yes. You could climb over it. I wouldn't want to because, no, never mind. I'll leave it that way. All right. I have gone to great lengths to make the fence look authentic.
okay, well, that fence looks authentic. I mean,
It's gonna be more
authentic
authentic.
would be for a fence, but
Yeah, it's going to be more authentic than what that fence looks because the panels are going to be, being that it's a pre-made panel, they come in a certain size. The panels aren't going to match that anymore. They're going to match the posts to make it symmetrical on the wall.
Okay.
Okay?
thank you.
George, could I ask you to put up this particular photo? I just have one quick question about. So I'd ask the owner or the general project manager if this represents the extent of the fencing in this particular proposal?
Yes.
Or has that changed at all in the
No,
process
no, it has
here?
not
I'm
changed.
Just
It-
asking whether this is the request.
That's exactly what's going to be done. Now, there was a question, I understand, about a fence in back of it, being concerned as to whether we built that, whether it was permitted or not. I can't tell you that because it was built when I started managing the reconstruction of that home.
Well, I think I'll have to open up that can of worms a bit. That
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that that fence has been there for, well,
Forever.
Tanya bought the property, 4 years ago? About 4 years ago, the fence was there. Kat has a picture of it in her iPhone, in her phone. It's there.
It's a little disconcerting to us to work on a stop work order for not having come through the proper channels. And so when I hear that you're going to do everything possible to make this authentic, there's just a little tinge of doubt there. I don't
understand. I don't understand why.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I just don't understand why, because what I say, I do.
Well, we all try to do that, sir.
No,
I'm just saying that we have a situation here where a couple of times, as I understand it, George can tell me if that's right, that the appropriate process was not followed in construction on this property. And that's...
Sir, I need to clarify that. I pulled the permit on that property. When I pulled the permit, I asked the building department, how do you want me to proceed with the walls? Because I know of 3 ways of handling the reconstruction of that property. I was told, quote, unquote, building procedure is at the discretion of the contractor. Now, I opted to move those walls for safety reasons, which was to move them and secure them to that tree on the side and the back building. If the city had told me that it had to, and by the way, they never told me what I did wrong or what went wrong. And the head of the building department is very aware of this conversation because I had it with him afterwards, a few minutes after I got the stop work order. If they had told me that to be authentic, it has to stay within the footprint, I could have raised the walls to put the slab underneath it. This is not my fault. I did everything I was told. I went to the Preservation Society. I spoke with Kat on every design change in that house to make it as authentic as possible. And that house is, in my opinion, more authentic than the 2 houses being built down in Park. I've reused 80% of the lumber that was in the original house to rebuild that home and keep it authentic. If you go down and look at the soffits, you'll find that it is the old, real 1-inch lumber with the nail holes in it still.
Thank you. You are aware, though, that the Preservation Commission has some say over this project, and that...
I've tried very hard to work with the Preservation Committee. I was working with Kat on a regular basis. Anytime I had a question, I would ask Kat. And I asked about the procedure.
Okay.
So I opted for safety.
We've
Okay?
talked enough about that. But I just
Do you
wanted
have
to bring
any
that
other
up.
questions? Do you have any other questions?
Pardon?
I said, do you have any other questions for me?
I don't personally, but... Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just for a little clarification, a remodeling permit was pulled and the house was removed entirely. That's not a remodeling.
Thank
That's
you.
why the stop work order was invoked. That's the only reason why.
Thank you. So as commission members, I think we need to remember what our purview is, and that is the appropriateness of this request for fence location and installation and the overall integrity, appearance, quality of this, of this. So pursuant to that, I would ask if the commission members have any thoughts on a motion or more discussion about this, or if there are any other questions from the council, from the commission, I'm sorry.
I think we've covered the fence part.
Okay. Well,
Mr. Chairman, just one other point of clarification to help you
Please.
with this. Your purview extends to the materials. There was some discussion about what the fence would be made of and what the materials are. You can include specific materials in your motion. You've been told that it's a steel fence that will be installed permanently, that there will be 5/8 rebar, half-inch rebar used for that. You can be specific in your approval, and we will verify that through the permit process, through the inspection process.
thank you, and I think that's totally appropriate on this, since we're not seeing samples of this fencing. We've had some discussion from other people in the neighborhood about what the materials are. So I think we can, if a motion is to be made, that we specify materials. Does someone want to take a look at this motion, please?
Well,
Russ?
I'll
Thank you.
offer
Okay.
a motion here. Motion to approve at HP 18-002, request for approval of the wrought iron steel fence, and as stated right here, wrought iron steel fence, an iron fence, to be mounted on half-inch or 5/8 rebar, drilled into the existing stone and concrete wall, not to exceed 3 feet from the wall to the top of the fence, as submitted.
Darla, did you get? Sorry. Oh,
Submitted. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, you have a motion, you need a second.
yeah, we need a second to discuss.
Question.
We need a,
You
Sir,
stated,
sir.
no,
sir,
we have a
done.
procedural thing here,
Done,
so
have a seat.
we need to have a second before any discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Tony, okay, thank you. And
It's up to the chair if you want to take additional information. Typical process would not have additional information at this point.
Darla, would you read that motion, or just, please? Thank you, sorry.
Okay, so the motion is to approve HP 18-002 on 929 Apache Drive, the request approval for a wrought iron / steel fence in the front yard, mounted to the 5/8, to be mounted with the 5/8 rebar drilled into the stone wall, not to exceed 3 feet from the top, as submitted.
Thank you. Is that clear with everyone?
This gentleman had said that those posts are gonna be taller than 3 feet.
And that's okay. We measure fence by the primary panels, not finials or anything attached to posts. Those are considered decorative.
Would it be more appropriate to say to meet the requirements of the building ordinances?
It's clear
Instead of
enough for
saying
us
3
to.
feet?
It's clear enough for us to enforce. 3
Okay.
feet, we know how to measure a fence based
Okay.
on all of our other fence installations.
Okay, are we clear on that? Motion has been made and second to approve this HP 18-002 as so stated by the motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can move on to the next item.
Yes. And the next item is HP 18 dash, I'm sorry here, dash 004, 824 East Gurley Street, Historic Preservation District, number 11. This concerns the Prescott Armory.
Finish this.
Another request for window restoration. You'll recall that we had this before us previously for other windows. So now they're wanting to restore another series of windows. So I will turn this over to Mr. Worley as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have Mick Finnick here, who will be primary person responsible for managing this project. He works for us, for the city of Prescott. This is a follow-on to some work that was done previously. There were window replacements that, if you recall, that resulted in better energy savings for the Armory building because of the newer materials being used, but they were done in such a way that it matched the original window type and construction. That work has been completed. This commission reviewed and approved that work. This is a follow-on case where additional windows that have been compromised over the years. You can see an example where a louver was installed in one of the panels, and I apologize, it's very hard to get a dark photo to show up on this overhead and show you any detail. The window was compromised to put ventilation in, either in the form of the louver, as you see here, or in the form of a fan. And a number of the windows were modified this way over the years. One of the efforts that's being proposed is to restore much of those windows back to a condition similar to, or as close as we can get to, the original, and with modern materials that additionally help with the insulation of the building, the energy efficiency of the building. This is another case similar to that last one. We believe it's a positive step to continue to reuse the building, make it continue to be a reasonable reuse of an older building. Mr. Finnick can answer more specific questions about what and how the replacements would be done, and I understand we have a representative of the company that will be doing the work here also, who may be able to help with answering any of your questions along the way. And with that,
Thank you.
Open it up to you and perhaps questions for Mr. Finnick.
Are these, I'll just open the first one. Are these windows, I understand the other ones were steel, and these are wooden?
That is, first of all, Mick Fennick, Facilities Manager, City of Prescott.
Thank you.
434 North Mount Vernon. Thank you, first of all, for hearing us today. Yeah, these, we call these cathedral windows, cathedral-style windows. They are wood windows with wood mullions, single pane, very brittle glass. Over the years, as Mr. Worley pointed out, they had been modified to help reduce some of the heat that gathers in the gym over the course of the summer. And what our goal is to ultimately bring all the windows in the Armory back to an original configuration with energy efficient modern techniques. For instance, the glass that will go into these windows, they will be, by the way, made wood. They will be just like the original with the wood mullions. The glass is called a Solex glass. It is a single pane, but it's a laminated glass, which has about the same energy efficiency as 1-inch dual glazed glass. I believe it's an R2. So it also has a low E component to it for the sunlight in the summertime to kind of keep it cooler. We also have in our facilities plan this year, we have a project to deal with the heat that builds up in that gym. and it's going to be some type of an exhaust system. We're meeting with, you're probably familiar with Mr. Otwell, Bill Otwell of Otwell Architects, Jamie Tiglis. Those two particular gentlemen did the courthouse HVAC project, did a wonderful job. So we're going to be meeting with them next week, because in our plan this year is also to deal with the heat exhaust out of the building. Mr. Lester, who is behind me here, did the work on the west side lower windows and the east side upper windows, where we had, over the years, they had removed the steel mullions and put in air conditioning units. That's all been taken out, restored back to the original condition, and with the low E single pane glass that is the laminated glass. Looks fantastic. He also hand forged all of the security bars. So this is phase 2 of what we hope to be a 3-phase project. The following year, we're going to deal with the upper windows on the west side and the lower windows on the east side, and the windows on the north and south side, to bring those all back to the original configuration, using, again, the security bars reforged that would have been taken out, putting the low E glass in. So this is phase 2 of the project.
Mick, how long will it take to do this?
Well, assuming that we get your agreement today that we could go forward, we have to take it to council, and our schedule is to start it over the holiday. But you're going to start building in July, but the installation will take place in September or August. August and September. We think we can have this all done by the end of September.
That's a pretty aggressive schedule.
It is.
Good job.
He can get it done.
I believe that.
This is an interior shot of
It is, yes, sir.
existing,
Existing, yes.
and then usually we're interested in what it looks like from the outside, and what it's going to look like when it's done.
I have one picture that might be a little bit better. It kind of shows, this particular picture shows the mullions, which the other ones, it's so bright you can't see it, but you can kind of see what it looks like. There's, looks like 9 lights in the middle section, and 6 lights on each side. So you can imagine that's what it'll, from the outside. Pretty hard to see it up close, because these things are
I know. I
30
took
feet in
pictures
the
of
air.
that stuff
Yeah.
not too long ago, and
Yeah.
it's way up there.
Yeah, it's way up there.
So
But
you're
it
not
will.
proposing any exterior change to the building associated
No,
with the window replacement?
we're not. We're going to take that out, and maybe Paul, you could speak a little bit to how you're going to accomplish this.
Hi, Paul Lester, 3785 North Malapi in Chino Valley. From the outside, you really can't see, obviously, much of these windows unless you're up on the roof. And in fact, coming down, you can't see it here, but coming down in front of that middle section on the roof, about a foot off of the glass, is a downspout from the roof above, the gutter. So you don't even see that hardly through there. So it's, I don't think from the outside, maybe a couple of places on Gurley Street, you might get a little bit of a glimpse, but
Yeah.
it's all really visual only from the inside.
Are these wood windows, so the exterior will be painted?
They're wood windows. They will be wood windows. The exterior would be painted. And then, of course, they have the original glaze, or, the proper glazing and all that's put on there. They're easy to maintain because you walk up on the roof and they're literally right at this level.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple deal to work with up there. We've thought about the idea of possibly cladding those 2 or 3 vertical, or the 2 vertical members there on the outside when they're all done. But I'm kind of concerned about water collecting between, the cladding and the wood and causing a problem there. So I kind of prefer to keep everything open and visual.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other statements or questions from the commission?
Motion to approve. HP 18004, and Motion to
Motion.
approve.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Second has been made. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick. Get it done.
Get her done.
Get her
Get
done.
her done.
We'll do it.
And thank you for the presentation. Well done.
Next order of business is if there are any other current events or any other items of note from
Well, I
anyone
was
present.
hoping that Kat would be here to give us an update of what she found last week, but
the conference.
being she's not here, unless George knows.
I do not. She is planning to do that at your next meeting to give you an update of what she learned from that meeting. I have not had a chance to talk to her about it either.
Thank you, sir.
Well, any other comments?
Adjourn.
I think I can adjourn this June 15th meeting of the Preservation Commission.
Man.
Thank you.
Thank you, one and all.